okay, I was pretty calm until I saw that movie, and it's always stressful to see yourself on the screen with other dynamic people, and I forgot what I said during that interview, so I was excited to hear what I said. And keep in mind, filming those things is always very stressful because there's usually just one or two people in the room with you, and so you never know it's going to be shown to a large crowd like this. So you would change what you say if you knew it was going to be screened for all of these people. And so in that regard, I'm usually ad lib speaker, which means I just kind of get up and let her rip. And because you are such a esteemed group and out of my element a little bit, I do have some notes here to refer to keep me on track. So I'll just get going here, and the slides will catch up with me in a second. But I do like the title of this. There is blending between Colorado. Those questions are not comparable because they're two completely different environments. One is a park, that is the first slide. One's a park, and one's a broader human-dominated landscape. Let me see if I can get this going here a little bit. Okay, so it's not hitting the full screen. Okay, I guess I'll take the partial screen. So the answer is going to be different for each place. But really, fundamentally, this is all about wolves. And so really, it is comparable. But I will say what you expect to happen won't happen. And what you want to happen won't happen either. I worked on Isle Royale for roughly 15 years, and every decade, the answers were different. So to try and compare wolves in Yellowstone to comparison in Colorado is a very difficult undertaking to do. So you have to answer the question from the beginning, why have them then if we don't know what they're going to do or what's going to happen? And I think the answer to that is because they defy us. They're a red flag to human society to pause and stop and to think about what we're doing to other creatures, to the environment. I think that is a very healthy question to even ask. Wolves do that to us. They cause us to pause and stop. Okay, now it's not advancing. Maybe I'll do this. There we go. Well, okay, there's the next slide. And they do this. They kill. And so this is something we have to be very upfront about. This is what makes them controversial. But it's a warning to humans that we need to stop. And this has already been done. Bill McKibben did this brilliantly in his 1980 book, The End of Nature, which is all about climate change. And that was 45 some years ago. And we haven't done anything about it at all, really, from what I can understand. But as Coloradans, as Americans, we've restored wolves here to Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and that's in a small way acknowledging this stopping of human advancement that is occurring all over, not only just North America, but the world. So this is kind of a recycled slide that I used from talks that I give in Yellowstone of a philosophical nature. Wolves, wildness, and what is life from a wolf? I think that's another benefit of having wolves back on the landscape. Or you could frame it as restoring nature to the mother park as the most prominent example of rewilding. And a lot of this has to do with the human heart. Mindset, cultural norms, human attitudes. We did not grow more wolf habitat in Yellowstone. You have not grown more wolf habitat in Colorado. In fact, it may be the reverse. People are moving to the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. People are moving to Colorado. There's less space. There's probably more conflict. And so it's at the pleasure of the people who live here and there to have wolves back. So this is a very important area to think about. So Yellowstone was one of the first places people went to restore wolves. It is arguably the largest intact temperate zone ecosystem in the world. It's roughly the size of Connecticut, about 22 million acres, whatever kind of units you use. So it immediately cried out for wolves, and it was a grassroots effort for many years. This is a slide got skipped. Slide number 11 is not loading. It's this slide here. And I don't know if you can see that in the back, but it's a slide from the GIS lab at Montana State showing all the roads of any kind in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And you can see that it shows the outlines of Yellowstone Park, the Bridger-Teton National Forest, and Shoshone National Forest, and all the other area is covered in roads. And this is considered one of the most intact temperate zone ecosystems in the world, yet look at this human access. And it's been long known that human access is what leads to wolf mortality. And so this is a very important metric for determining the success of wolf recovery. And so this next slide is a poor choice in slide because there's too much for you to look at and understand. You should never make a slide this noisy. But the point of it is, this is 25 years of wolf pack territories in Yellowstone, and you can see where they settled, where they picked for themselves. That was a comment I had in the film. I think what CPW is doing, let the wolves find the spots where they want to settle, and you learn quickly there are some places that are good for wolves that they self-select, and other areas that never are. So year to year, these wolf pack territories are consistent, and they stay on the landscape. And we're skipping a slide. It's only getting my odd slides. So this is the next slide. This is showing the wolf population over the last 30 years in Yellowstone. And what this shows is a rapid phase of increase where the population built up rapidly. It declined 2 different times due to disease. What I'm calling this is the colonization phase. And then there's a second phase where the population has leveled out at about 100 wolves in 10 packs. And it's been at that level since about 2008. And the only reason I bring that up for this slide is what phase your population is in, colonization or saturated, is very indicative of a lot of different things about the wolves. For example, in the colonization phase, pack size is going to be smaller and less complex because most of the wolves born to that pack are going to leave right away or earlier because they're going to settle a landscape where there's places to go. So it keeps pack size down. It keeps pack complexity down. Dispersal rates are high, reproductive rates are high, and killing wolves, how did you do that?
I'm just going to have to advance it manually.
Okay, I can't use these.
You can try.
Okay. Okay, so in the saturation phase, a lot of these wolves, this is saturation, population growth is pretty much stable. This is the colonization phase, which Colorado's in right now. Pack size is going to be slightly larger. This is if it's not reduced by human-caused mortality. Pack complexity is higher. Delayed dispersal is higher. Pup production may go down. Hit things with density dependence. So just knowing what phase your population is very valuable in knowing a lot of things about wolf population dynamics. Didn't work. Okay, so that is the next slide for now. Pack structure and complexity is very important to the wolf population. And so a compact pack, wolves are multi-generational in a complex pack. That means you have pups, you have yearlings, you have auxiliaries, and you have adults. So you can have packs, say the average pack size the last 30 years in Yellowstone is 10. There are a lot more different compositionally. There's older wolves. Older wolves can be very important in the population. And then simple packs you tend to have for a colonizing population or a population that's harvested heavily by people. So it tends to be just a pair and their pups. So how they function on the landscape is very different than how a complex, you have experience, you have leadership ability in these complex packs. So I think this is important for what's going to be coming in Colorado. This is one of the most examples of a complex pack in Yellowstone. It was phased in slide. It showed the female male hierarchies separately, but it came up all at once. That's okay. But what this shows is female breeding tenure and male breeding tenure. And some of these are overlapping because the daughter inherited the breeding position from the female. And it shows that a lot of these packs in Yellowstone that experience low human-caused mortality are matriarchies. So female offspring are inheriting breeding positions from their mothers or grandmothers, and males typically are dispersing it at a higher rate to avoid inbreeding. So new males come in from outside. So dispersal in Yellowstone is very strongly male dominated, and a lot of wolf populations that are studied, this is not the case. Probability of dispersal for males and females is equal. Prove this, but I think that's because of human-caused mortality. So it breaks apart the packs, then it becomes more advantageous for both sexes to disperse. So a lot of wolf publications show equal probability of dispersal, but there also is a small number that show male dispersal. Yellowstone is strongly that. So I think what you're going to see in Colorado is probably more human-influenced packs than we see in Yellowstone. And this is an example of, this is a shot from Wyoming in the predator zone where humans are strongly impacting pack structure and stability. And so what this comes down to is space. And wolves have always existed in Canada. This is kind of the mother lode of wolves in North America, actually in the world. Canada wolf population is estimated at 50 to 60,000. And it's because of low conflicts with humans, lots of remote regions where they do well. So where that's an important question. We all know from the film, we all know from the work at CPW, that space is here, but it's not going to be space like in northern Canada. Wolves are going to have to figure these things out on their own. There's a lot of high country, there's a lot of people, but that's going to be, and you're going to need enough space to have little clusters probably of packs, not just one spread out here and there, but clusters of a few packs together. So these family dynamics that I just talked about are allowed to play out. And so one thing I noticed about Wyoming, so this is a map, I realize a square state, looks like another square state, but this is Wyoming, and this is not the most rigorous science, but the pilot that we use to fly Yellowstone wolves with also flies the wolves in the state of Wyoming. And so you have lots of hours in a plane with the pilot. And I would talk to him about this. And what he noticed in Yellowstone is we have a lot of these packs that are very stable. That pack structure I showed you, that pack has been going for 30 years in Yellowstone. You never see a pack exist like that in Wyoming. High turnover because of human-caused mortality. I'm not saying human-caused mortality in the trophy game zone is bad. It's just that if you're getting a wolf or two off from each pack each year, that pack might not exist in the landscape for a long time. There's high pack turnover, but it's good territory, so another pack moves in. So he's flying Yellowstone wolves, he's flying Wyoming wolves, he notices high pack turnover, and he also notices that most of the packs in Wyoming, again, I acknowledge this isn't rigorous science, this is just a pilot flying in and out of the park, are pairs with pups. And then in Yellowstone, it's a rare pack that pairs with pups. We get those multi-generational families with many age classes and a breeding pair. And this is a stark boundary between in and out of the park. This is a prediction that I hope you'll look for in Colorado, but my prediction is most of your packs are going to be like this because they're going to be dealing, it's a human-dominated landscape. There might be pockets of packs like the pack structure I showed you, but I think those will be the minority. That is one thing to be looking for. I could be wrong. Another area in Yellowstone that I think has been talked a lot about in Colorado is what are the ecosystem impacts of wolves? And this is an interesting one to me because ecosystems are probably more complex than we can even think about. But northern Yellowstone has been intensively studied. I think Will is going to talk about this more for Rocky Mountain National Park. But this has been a study. Snapshot of it is this, what's called a trophic cascade. So the carnivores impact the prey, which impact the vegetation, and the vegetation, other things that respond to it. And this is indirect effects. So indirect is key to understanding what a trophic cascade is. How can carnivores impact vegetation through this middle layer? And this has been hotly studied and contested in Yellowstone. Partly because large carnivores were wiped out from Yellowstone early in the part of the last century, and it changed the dynamics of Yellowstone greatly. The grasslands are worth talking about, but even more importantly, the woody vegetation. Woody vegetation does not deal with elk herbivory as well as, say, the grasses do. So this strongly impacted the woody vegetation. Here's a historic photo from Lamar Valley, I believe in the 1920s, and a lot of researchers have noted this. You had lush riparian areas with willow, aspen, and cottonwood, and because of the loss of carnivores from Yellowstone and the response of the elk coming back, it really impacted this vegetation. And this has been one of the hottest scientific areas of study the last 30 years. And the Park Service response to having no carnivores was to either kill elk in the park, the state of Montana to kill them at the boundary, or to ship elk to every Western state and Canada and Mexico because of this burgeoning elk population. And between about 1923 and 1968, 77,000 elk were either killed or shipped out of the park. And so this is what happens when you don't have any carnivores. And so with the return of wolves and cougars came back through natural dispersal. Bears were never completely eliminated. They came back on their own. You have the fully restored carnivore suite in Yellowstone again, maybe for the first time in 150 years since park establishment. And so this has had dramatic impacts on the elk population. This only goes back to 1923, that first year I mentioned. But this was what we're calling the period of artificial control, the time when those 77,000 elk were removed. That stopped in the late 1960s, partly due to public pressure, partly due to a change in Park Service policy, and the population really erupted. And right in here is when wolves were introduced and cougars naturally reestablished themselves and the population has declined. And this is a very, very hard story to tell to the American public because the American public is all about more is better. And this is a story of less is more. And it's very, very hard to communicate. But this is probably a better, more ecologically appropriate population size for northern Yellowstone than what it was when it was up to 20,000 elk. So a very difficult story to tell. Oops, I forgot, I gotta go here. And so this, what has been studied since is what has this done? And this is where the debate has occurred. This is a beaver colony that I took a picture from the air of that restored itself to a creek that had beavers for decades. So beavers started responding. I did, I believe, 17 aerial surveys over 30 years in Yellowstone, and they have increased during the time frame of recovery. And so you get strong ecological interactions like this here, our beaver dams here, beaver lodges, they back up water, and they create habitat for any number of other species. For example, songbirds. This is a Wilson's warbler, willow using obligate, that means they only use willows, as is a willow flycatcher. I also worked with birds in Yellowstone, and those species are on the increase. The hard part about this study, this is aspen. What's interesting about this is you only have young aspen and you only have old aspen, nothing in between, probably because elk took out that mid-layer of aspen recruitment by grazing. And so what's hard about this story is it's become a kind of intractable scientific debate that the public doesn't. Sometimes are lost on the public as the scientists battle it out in scientific literature, which imperfectly gets to the popular literature. And so this is confusing to the public. Very important point. And I think it speaks to staying ahead of science communication. I think you need to push these issues and you need to speak frequently about what is happening, because people who come to Yellowstone, who've been coming there for a long time, will see willow releasing, they'll see aspen releasing, yet they read in the newspaper that it's not. And so what confuses them is what's happening. I look with my eyes and I see restored willow stands, but the scientific studies say they're not coming back. And a lot of this has to do with subtle differences in methodology and subtle differences in how you frame your scientific work. Like really, what are the historic conditions of 1900? What ecological state is 1900? And what did the loss of carnivores do to that ecological state? Was it really a willow beaver state in 1900? And did it change to an elk grassland state? And then did it not change back? Those are fine details that are lost on the public that we need to, with wolves, explained much differently. Scientific communication is really important for this. And decline in elk, is not just due to wolves. You got these, and you got, well, I'm off a slide, bears as well. And this is another aspect of ecosystem effects. It's not just about a trophic cascade. That wolves kill, bears took it, coyotes are using it, crows use it, magpies use it, coyotes use it, all kinds, a plethora of animals will use it, invertebrates will use it. So these are other ecosystem effects. Raven study is going on. I said collared. We put transmitters on over 100 ravens in Yellowstone to study. You know, they're considered to be wolf birds. So a team of scientists led by John Marsloff and Matthias Loretto from Germany, we're really trying to get at this. So we instrumented a ton of ravens. And the answer is ravens do whatever they need to do to survive. They'll follow people, they'll follow wolves. They do just a bit of everything. But my point is the trophic cascade story has really dominated, and there's a lot more to this food web that wolves and cougars and bears entered into than just that. Of course, balls. To Yellowstone in 1994, there were 500 bison in northern Yellowstone. Now there are over 4,000. And if you run the kind of mathematical prediction of what the wolf population should be in northern Yellowstone now, it should be less than what it is now. But it's not, probably because it's being supported by all this bison biomass. And a lot of that bison biomass is not killed by wolves, but when you have 4,000 bison, they're going to die from other things. I don't mean to anthropomorphize, but the wolves know it. And so why get your head bashed in? Not this winter, but last winter, 1,200 bison were killed at the park boundary. So what impact is taking that biomass out of the park going to do on the dynamics of predator-prey inside the park? So that's looking to the future. And so again, coming back to the beginning of my talk, what's going to happen is going to be really hard to predict. And that's the latest really big change for dynamics in northern Yellowstone. But wolves still, and in Colorado, elk is going to be their primary prey. That's the iconic species in both states. And so a lot of work has gone into looking at elk and wolf relationships. The first thing I want to say, and I'll admit, Eric Odell is going to speak later. He knows a lot more about elk in the state of Colorado than I do. But wolves are not going to impact the elk and deer populations in Colorado. You heard in the film, I think Mike Phillips said it, you know, you've got the biggest elk herd of any state. These are the data, a little bit dated, 1995 to 2018, in Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. The blue bars are the number of elk, and the brown bars are the number of elk killed by hunters each year. And all the blue bars are larger post-wolf reintroduction than pre-wolf reintroduction. In fact, the state of Montana right now is 50,000 elk over state objectives. And harvest rates are either equal to data from Montana, 1995, or greater than what it was when wolves were introduced. So pay very careful attention to what's being said about wolf impacts on elk and deer, because it's science communication will be key. I would get out front of this issue. I would push the issue hard. Don't be shy to speak out. And I'm not just talking to my colleagues in the front row. I'm talking to all of you. Misinformation, dogs, wolves, everywhere. And here are hard data, state data, showing more elk after wolves were introduced than before. And you will get it here. You will get it. Elk, they've ruined my hunting. It might not be the same as it was in every area. These three states. And so you don't need to look at the details of this graph. This is, again, an inappropriate graph to show to a group like you. These are actual data. If you're interested, this is the age of what we estimate to be the age of the elk population in northern Yellowstone. The yellow bars, you know, a young age structure. The gray bars are the ages of the elk that the wolves kill. So this shows strong preferences for older age classes of elk. Just the survival curve, you can see they have excellent survival during their prime years. They're probably not going to get killed by a wolf at all. And then it starts coming down, and this is wolf-caused mortality. Very simple graph, very hard to get data like this. This is years and years of work. You got to sample the live elk population. You got to sample the wolf-killed elk population. But the point that I'm trying to make is the team at CPW is on top of this. And you want to be, because that's going to be a flashpoint. Other than livestock, Stuart Brecht's going to talk about livestock, but hunters are going to talk about what wolves are doing to their elk. And just keeping up with these kinds of things, which is what's the point of this graph. The only point I want to make, wolves are highly selective, and they're killing the least productive segment of the elk herd. And it took me 10 seconds to say. You want to say that in the news. You want to talk about that. And you want to talk about it. I'm starting to get my rhythm back. I really got thrown off at the beginning. I know what slide is coming up next. But you want to talk with it about with the people who don't think like you. And this might be my single most important message to my years in Yellowstone. An old ranger came up to me and said, "You're doing a terrible job." And this was about 5 years into my career in Yellowstone, and it took the wind out of my sails. I've been doing the best I can, man. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. And he's like, "No one reads your scientific publications. No one reads your popular articles. They don't even look at your reviews because they don't care. You got to take the message to the people riding the mountains with guns." So we saddled up that fall. We did a week trip together. He was a retired ranger of 30 years in Yellowstone, and he knew every outfitter on the south boundary of the park. And we rode into every camp. And we talked to those outfitters. And I did that almost, I don't want to say I hit every year, but almost every single year to the time I retired on all the north, the east, and the south boundary of Yellowstone. And I would argue it was more important than any scientific work I did. First, I learned a ton. Second, I'm talking to people who do not think like me at all. And three, you're getting out in the mountains on horseback, which isn't a bad deal. But it was also communication. The goal never was to change their minds, but to open it up. To see them in settings like this, out of the mountains, and be able to stop by the back door and have a conversation. So really, the future of wolves is in your hearts and minds. That's where the future is. Are you going to love the space? And a lot of that revolves around hunting. There's a big debate. It's open-ended. Stuart Breck is a better person to address this than me. But does killing wolves grow social tolerance? A lot of people say no, wolf hatred trumps everything. And other people say no, it buys tolerance. And I think there's papers, there's talks, there's arguments on both sides of this debate. I don't know exactly how Stuart feels or Eric, because these are big decisions that need to be made. But I think in my mind, it's an open debate. And a lot of people from Canada and Alaska who never lost wolves say that's the key. You got to be part of the landscape of hunting. So this is a photo from Montana. Almost instantly, once wolves are delisted, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho instituted a hunting season. Very different than the lake states of Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, although they have experimented with hunting some as well. You probably heard about the Wisconsin story, but they're now on the endangered species list again. And so whether you like it or not, these issues are falling into the realm of the political arena. And this is a new world for me. I testified twice this winter in front of the Montana legislature, but these decisions now are becoming political. And this is tough surfing. This is the history politically of wolf recovery to Idaho and the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, and it was bipartisan. I'm probably running out of time, so I don't want to take you through it, but it's a good list of Republicans and Democrats, and the program that I ran in Yellowstone relied a lot on private donations. The donations came from big donors from both parties. And so this dynamic no longer holds, I think. That's my opinion. And so how are you going to do that in Colorado? And then you'll get prominent wildlife biologists, like Dr. Valerie Geis from University of Calgary, who talk about the danger of wolves that you're going to have to deal with. I knew Dr. Geis very well. We did this issue, but you're going to have to blunt that. You're going to get all kinds of people writing in. You're going to get this kind of thing. This is just off a Facebook post. This is very upsetting and disturbing, but the argument these folks are making, some of which were in a talk that I had to give one time. I barely was able to finish my talk because of all the interruptions. But to them, this is a true American patriot. There's a dead wolf, an American flag, everyone's got a gun, and they're wearing white masks. So this, with wolves, you get this kind of thing. And so it's going to be a little bit of a threading the needle. I think this is the National Park Service mission where I worked, no use. And this is the state mission, wise use, conservation. And so those two different philosophies will have to be worked out. It's a little bit more difficult in the GYE because you had Grand Teton, you had Yellowstone, which comprise, 2/3 of the public land there, half anyways, and then you go from preservation to conservation. It was a more delicate balance. And so I really do appreciate the title of your symposia, Myth to Reality. And I've spent my career studying the reality, but I like the myth better. And I think I like the myth better because it's about wildness. And what you did, not just by bringing wolves back, but you restored an element of the wild. And that's the thing we're losing. And that's the red flag I referred to at the beginning of my jumbled start. Humans are just rolling over the world. And wolves are one of those few forces that say, stop. So the stories, the myths, Jack London, Robert Service, those are stories just of 100 or so years ago about the wilds of the North and what they mean, and the wolf was integral to them. A close friend of mine who studied wolves in the Yukon Territory for 18 years studied wolves because of reading Jack London when he was a kid. So your theme here, the myths are important, but what's important is at the heart of every story is truth. This is my favorite photo from reintroducing wolves to Yellowstone. I show it to groups every year. I see it many times a year. What is her story? That's wolf number 7. Came in first shipment. She was part of the Rose Creek pen. Look at those eyes. Would you not want to know what she's thinking? And that's the most told story in all of wolf recovery. And I hesitate to even bring it up because it's a little bit tired and plain, but Aldo Leopold looked into those eyes and saw that fierce green fire dying. That's the look of wildness. That's the importance of what you guys have done. Now, people are going to commodify it, they're going to market it, they're going to sell it. And I used to be philosophically against that. So what? Who cares? Bringing back wildness, even if people make money off of it. And the wolf industry in Yellowstone is estimated to be $82 million a year. Now, I don't know if Rocky Mountain's going to be able to replicate that. But the point is I'll take wildness back any way I can get it. And I think that is the overarching thing you as Coloradans have done. That's exciting. That's true restoration. And so one thing to heed that I learned after all, the point of my talk here is what you learn in Yellowstone that applies to Colorado. I spent my life, for those of you in the back, this is a quote by Daniel Kahneman, who was an economic psychologist. Not quite sure what that means, but no one ever made a decision because of a number. They need a story. There's going to be great people here putting numbers on things. Colorado's done as good a job as any outfit bringing wolves back in terms of preparation and planning and documentation. But you guys are going to tell the stories. And you're going to have to do it hard because it's just begun what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of bad stories out there. And if you've ever seen a wolf in the wild, you don't forget it. I mean, don't take this the wrong way. Do you know how many stories I've heard from people seeing a wolf in the wild? And every single time someone tells it to me, for them, it's a life-changing event. And they tell it in their best storytelling fashion, like it's gripping. But that's what wolves do. And that's what you just got back to Colorado. And that might be more than all this ecological scientific predator-prey population dynamic stuff that everyone's going to talk about. Because after all, what do we need most in the world today? Something to uplift us and get us out of our ruts of thinking that all too many of us have. You need this in Colorado. What are wolves here for? What's her story? What's her story? Wouldn't you like to know? Are wolves here for the hunter? You know, culling the game herds, you'll be hunting wolves? Are they here for the nature lover? Better connection to nature? Are they for the rancher? Forcing them to have better husbandry? Isn't that a good thing? Are they here for the Colorado citizen, which is to enrich your life? That's what I've been talking about. Are they here for the politician, to keep them honest? And maybe to do something else that's better spent time? Or are they here for future generations? All of those are things that you're going to have to think about. Or look at her. This is Wolf 926, Lamar Canyon Pack. What about them? What about life separate from humanity? She's got intrinsic value. Her life is valuable to herself. Shouldn't we think about that as well? Now, I realize a lot of people are against wolf recovery because what it does to the individual animals, and it's brutal. Friends of mine have articulated that argument. But nonetheless, it's striving for that. That's what you're trying to do. So the American people said yes to Yellowstone. The Colorado people said yes to Colorado. I think that is a very, very important point. So the beginning of my talk was very tough. Sorry about that. So can I answer the question about what bringing wolves back to Yellowstone means and about rewilding Yellowstone? This is what I learned. I hope you will have your own lessons. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Keep going. I learned that from a wolf. Truly. Many days I felt sorry for myself. They pulled me up. That's an uplifting thought that they can give us. Think about something else. I walk around the world today and everything's about people. Everything. The economy, the tariffs, immigration, blah, 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 blah. Wolves make you think about something else. You should think about life separate from humanity. And then trust in this world has completely broken down. Trust. Most difficult, do it anyway. Nature is dependable and trustworthy. That's what I learned from a wolf in Yellowstone. And this is my last slide. I've lost track of time due to a poor start, but this is the frontispiece from the Wolves of Mount McKinley, now called Denali. Adolph Murray put this in his book. It was one of the first wolf books I read, and it always perplexed me. Why would he quote poetry at the bottom? This is all about science and ecosystems and ecology. Leave the poetry out. I hope now, after hearing my talk, you know why Adolph Murray put this in. The quote is, "The mountains are part of me. I am fellow to the trees." Robert Service. Look at those eyes. You'll know. This is what you did. Stay with it. Speak up. Nice work. Thank you very much.